The blizzard had raged for 3 days, and Arya Snowsong knew stepping into it was perilous, possibly deadly. Yet, the small mountain village she had called home for the past 2 years was dangerously low on firewood. As the only Omega without family duties, she had volunteered to make the trek to the forest storage shed, where emergency supplies were kept. Being albino had always marked Arya as different. But in this isolated village, where survival trumped superstition, the villagers had accepted her with practical tolerance. They didn't love her, but they didn't hate her either. Her usefulness was enough. The wind sliced through her heavy cloak as she trudged through snow that reached her knees, following the rope line the villagers had strung between buildings to prevent anyone from getting lost in the blizzard. The storage shed was only half a mile from the village center, but in this weather, it felt like a world away. She had just begun loading her sled with wood when she heard it, a sound that froze her blood despite the biting cold. It was a howl, unlike any she had ever heard. Weak, desperate, barely audible over the wind, it carried a pain so profound that it hurt to listen. Every survival instinct told Arya to ignore it, finish loading her sled, and return to the village before the storm worsened. But the sound came again, even weaker this time, and she found herself moving toward it before her mind could intervene. She followed the sound for what felt like hours, though it was likely only 20 minutes, leaving the safety of the rope line and venturing deeper into the forest. The howling had stopped, a silence that terrified her more than the sound had. Silence, she knew, often meant death. Then she saw it, a massive shape half buried in a snowdrift, nearly blending into the white expanse. As Arya approached, she realized it was a wolf in animal form. Not just any wolf. The creature was enormous, at least twice the size of a normal wolf, its fur black beneath a thick layer of snow and ice. "Oh, goddess," Arya whispered, dropping to her knees beside the wounded animal. She could see the extent of its injuries, deep gashes across its body, some still bleeding slowly, with ice clinging to its fur. Evidence that it had lain here for hours, possibly days. The wolf's eyes opened as she drew near, and Arya gasped. They were the most extraordinary gold she had ever seen. Intelligent, aware, despite the pain and the looming shadow of death. This was a shifted werewolf, not a mere animal. Even in its dying state, the power radiating from it marked it as an alpha of considerable strength. "I'm so sorry," Arya whispered, her voice trembling with genuine sorrow. "I don't have supplies to treat wounds this severe, and you're too heavy for me to move. I can't save you." The wolf's gaze remained locked on her face. She could have sworn it understood. It knew death was near, but it didn't want to face it alone. Her grandmother had once told her that the final gift for the dying was comfort, and that music could ease even the harshest passage. Her grandmother had wielded an old magic, the kind most modern wolves dismissed as superstition. Arya had inherited enough of it to understand that songs could do far more than entertain. "I can't save you," she repeated, her hand moving to rest gently on the wolf's massive head. "But I won't let you die alone. And maybe I can make it easier." She began to sing. It started as a lullaby her grandmother had taught her, words in the old tongue, mostly forgotten by modern wolves. But as she sang, the melody shifted, transforming into something far more profound, a death song, a passage meant to ease the journey from this world to the next. Without conscious thought, Arya poured her own life force into the music. Her voice carried vibrations beyond normal hearing, old magic flowing through her in ways it never had before. The air around them shimmered, and the falling snow slowed, swirling in patterns that defied nature. Her voice grew stronger, more resonant, channeling power into the dying wolf. Not enough to save him. His wounds were too grave, the blood loss too severe. But perhaps enough to ease his passing, to let him leave without suffering. She sang for what felt like minutes or hours, time dissolving into the strange bubble of magic and sound. Her voice never wavered, never faltered, even as tears froze on her pale cheeks and exhaustion clawed at her body. Finally, as her strength began to fail and her vision blurred from cold and exertion, Arya brought the song to its close. The last notes hung in the air like something tangible, crystalline and beautiful, before dissolving into the storm. "I'm sorry I couldn't do more," she whispered to the wolf, whose eyes had closed at some point during her song. "I hope you find peace in the next life. I hope someone is waiting for you there who loved you, who will be happy to see you again." She stayed there for a moment longer, her hand still resting on the wolf's head, too exhausted to move. Then she forced herself to rise, knowing that lingering any longer could mean freezing to death beside him. "Goodbye," Arya said softly. "Thank you for letting me comfort you. It was an honor to sing for someone so powerful, even if I couldn't save you." The trek back to the village passed in a blur. Arya moved on autopilot, following her own footprints before they were covered by fresh snow, barely aware of where she was going. When she finally stumbled through the door of her small cottage, she collapsed beside the fireplace, letting unconsciousness claim her. She awoke to pounding on her door and someone shouting her name. Disoriented and still drained, Arya pulled herself to her feet and opened the door to find Marcus, one of the village elders, standing there with shock and fear etched across his face. "Did you hear it?" he demanded. "Did you hear the howling last night?" "I heard dying howls yesterday," Arya replied, still foggy. "That's why I was gone so long. I found a wolf in the forest and stayed with it until it died." "Not dying howls," Marcus corrected, his voice rising with panic. "Victory howls, claiming howls, the kind that echo for miles and make every wolf in hearing distance understand that something significant has happened." Arya blinked, confused. "I don't understand. What does that have to do with me?" "Because the howls were calling your name," Marcus nearly shouted. All night long, from somewhere in the forest, a wolf of immense power was howling Arya's snow song over and over. Everyone in the village heard it. Everyone in the next 3 villages heard it. It was so loud, so powerful, that it woke sleeping children and made grown alphas submit from sheer force. The blood drained from Arya's face. "That's not possible. The wolf I found was dying. I sang for him to ease his passing, but he was too far gone to save. He should be dead." "Well, he's not dead," Marcus said grimly. "He's very much alive and he's calling for you, which means you need to leave this village immediately." The words struck Arya like a blow. "What? Why?" "Because whoever that wolf is," Marcus said, "he has the kind of power that could destroy our entire village without effort if he decides we're keeping you from him, and we're not getting involved in whatever this is. You brought this on yourself by interfering with something in the forest, and now you need to face the consequences away from innocent people." The unfairness of it stole Arya's breath, but she understood. These villagers had accepted her when others wouldn't, but that acceptance had always been conditional. They tolerated her as long as she didn't bring trouble. And a powerful wolf calling her name all night certainly counted as trouble. "How long do I have?" she asked quietly. "You're already packed and gone as far as the village is concerned," Marcus replied, his voice softening slightly. "I'm sorry, Arya. You've been a good neighbor, but we have children to protect, and we can't risk angering whatever is out there looking for you." An hour later, Arya was back in the forest, everything she owned strapped to her back. It wasn't much. Some clothes, basic supplies, and her grandmother's few possessions that she had managed to save over the years. She had been cast out of so many places in her 24 years that being forced to leave barely registered anymore. But this time was different. This time she was being hunted by something powerful, something that should have been dead, but wasn't. The wolf she had sung for, the one she had poured her life force into, was somehow alive, calling for her with a voice that carried for miles. She needed to put as much distance as possible between herself and whatever it wanted from her. Maybe it sought revenge for not saving it fully. Maybe it wanted to punish her for using magic on it without permission. Whatever the reason, Arya knew meeting it again would be dangerous. As she walked through the forest, trying to decide which direction to take, she heard it. A howl closer than it should have been, carrying across the trees with crystalline clarity despite daylight and distance. And it wasn't just any howl, it was her name, sung in a voice that made her soul resonate in ways she didn't understand. Arya Snow Song. The words weren't human language, yet she understood them perfectly. They were neither a threat nor a command. They were a call, an invitation, a plea wrapped in power and longing. Against all common sense, Arya found herself turning toward the sound instead of away from it. Something deep inside her, something she had never felt before, was responding to the call in ways that terrified and fascinated her in equal measure. She walked for hours, following the periodic howls that guided her deeper into the wilderness. The rational part of her mind screamed that this was insane, that she was walking into a trap. But the irrational part, the part tied to her grandmother's old magic, insisted this was right, that she needed to answer the call. As the sun began to set, Arya entered a clearing and stopped short. The wolf stood in the center of the clearing, even more magnificent than Arya remembered. The wounds that should have killed it were gone, leaving only faint scars beneath its midnight black fur. Its golden eyes were clear and alert, locked on her with an intensity that stole her breath. "You lived," Arya whispered, unable to look away. "I thought you were dying. I sang for you because I thought you wanted comfort in death, not because I believed I could save you." The wolf took a single step toward her, and Arya felt waves of power wash over her. This was no ordinary alpha. It was something far beyond, so powerful that her omega instincts urged submission. Then the wolf began to shift. Arya watched, fascinated, as the massive creature transformed into a man. He was tall, powerfully built, with dark hair falling past his shoulders and the same incredible golden eyes glowing in the fading light. Even in human form, his presence was overwhelming. "You did save me," he said, his voice deep and resonant, echoing the power of his howls. "Your song didn't just ease my dying, it brought me back from the edge of death itself. You poured your life force into me, using ancient magic that most wolves have forgotten, and pulled me from a fate that should have been inevitable." "I didn't mean to," Arya said, stepping back instinctively. "I just wanted to make your death peaceful. I didn't know it would work like that." But it did. He moved closer, and Arya realized she couldn't retreat further. Something about his presence rooted her in place. And in doing so, he continued, "You created a bond between us that goes deeper than friendship, deeper than gratitude, deeper than anything I've ever known." "What kind of bond?" Arya asked, though she felt she already understood. "The mate bond," he confirmed, his golden eyes never leaving hers. "When you gave me your life force, when you sang me back from death, you bound our souls together in a way that can never be undone. You are my mate, Arya Snowsong, the other half of my soul, the one being in all existence created to stand beside me." The words should have terrified her, yet instead something settled deep in her chest. That was why the howling had called so strongly. That was why she had been compelled to come, despite the danger. Her soul recognized its match, even if her mind had not yet caught up. "Who are you?" she asked quietly. "You're not just some random alpha lost in a blizzard." "No, I'm not." He smiled slightly, and the expression transformed him from intimidating to heartbreakingly beautiful. "My name is Kale Stormcrown, and I am the Alpha King of the Northern Territories. I was on a scouting mission when I was ambushed by rogues using silver weapons. They left me to die in the storm, and I probably would have if you hadn't found me," he said. Arya felt her knees threaten to buckle. She had saved the life of the most powerful wolf in existence, accidentally created a mate bond with him, and then tried to run away. "I'm nobody," she whispered, fear overwhelming her. "I'm a packless omega with albinism, considered cursed by most wolves. You can't possibly want me as a mate. This has to be some kind of mistake." "It's not a mistake." Kale closed the distance between them until they shared the same breath. "The moon goddess doesn't make errors when she creates mate bonds, Arya. And what you did for me, staying with a dying stranger, singing to ease his passing, giving your own life force to comfort him in death, shows the kind of soul you have. You're not nobody. You're extraordinary." "But I'm albino," Arya protested. "Most packs won't even accept wolves like me. How can I be queen when people will see my appearance as a curse?" "Then they're fools who don't deserve your time or attention." His hand rose to gently touch her white hair, and Arya shivered. "You are beautiful, Arya. Your appearance is unique and striking, and anyone who can't see that is blind. Besides, do you really think anyone will question the Alpha King's choice of mate, especially when that mate has the kind of magic that can literally call someone back from death?" That was a good point. The power she had poured into him through her song was rare and valuable. If she could do it once, she could do it again. "Why did you howl my name?" Arya asked, needing to understand. "All night, loud enough that everyone could hear." "Why?" he echoed. "Because I needed you to know that you weren't forgotten or dismissed," Kale replied, his voice rough with emotion. "I woke up healed, wrapped in the lingering traces of your magic and your scent, and you were gone. I followed your trail back to that village and heard the elder tell you to leave. I heard him dismiss your sacrifice and kindness as trouble, and I was furious." His eyes flashed gold, and Arya could feel his wolf pressing close to the surface. "You saved my life. You gave me part of your soul, and they thanked you by casting you out to protect themselves from my presence. So yes, I howled your name. I wanted every wolf in hearing distance to know that Arya Snowsong is under the protection of the Alpha King, that anyone who harms or dismisses her will answer to me personally. She is my mate, my queen, and the most important person in my kingdom." The fierce protectiveness in his voice made Arya's eyes sting with gathering tears. All her life she had been pushed aside, dismissed, treated as if she held no value because of how she looked. And now here he was, the strongest wolf in existence, openly declaring to the world that she mattered. "I don't know how to be a queen," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't understand court politics or ruling or how to be what you need." "Then I'll teach you." His thumb gently brushed the tear slipping down her cheek. "But Arya, listen to me. I don't need someone raised for politics or born into power. I need someone with a good heart. Someone who stayed with a dying stranger in a storm. Someone who risked her own life to ease his passing. You already have everything that truly matters. The rest can be learned." "What if I fail? What if I'm not strong enough?" "Then we'll fail together and grow from it." His smile was warm, genuine, so full of faith it made her chest tighten. "But I don't think you'll fail. I think you'll surprise everyone, including yourself, with how strong you really are." Arya lifted her gaze to the alpha who had become hers through a mix of magic, compassion, and impossible fate. Slowly, the last pieces of her resistance began to fall away. "You really want me? Even knowing what I am? What I look like?" "I want you because of what you are, not despite it," Kyle said firmly. "You're kind, brave, powerful in ways you don't even realize yet. And yes, your appearance is different from what some wolves expect. But Arya, different does not mean less. It means rare. It means special. It means unforgettable. And that is exactly what you are. When he kissed her, it felt like stepping into a home she had never known but had always been searching for. The mate bond surged between them, warm, bright, and unbreakable, locking into place with a certainty that stole her breath. At last, she understood her grandmother's words. Some songs didn't just fill silence, they rewrote destinies. She had sung to ease a dying man's final moments, but instead, she had created a beginning, a life, their life, woven from magic, music, and a bond that defied reason. What happens now? Arya breathed when they finally pulled apart, both glowing with the bond's energy. Now we go home, Kyle said softly. To the palace where you'll be honored as the woman who saved the Alpha King's life, where you'll learn what it means to be queen, where you'll discover the true depth of your magic, and where we'll build a future worthy of the gift the moon goddess has given us both. Just like that, I become a queen. Not just like that, he corrected softly. It will take time, effort, and patience. But Arya, you won't be doing any of it alone. I'll be beside you through every step, and so will everyone who serves our kingdom. You're not an outsider anymore. You're home. The word home struck Arya far deeper than she expected. She had never truly had one, only places that tolerated her presence until they decided they no longer wanted her. But looking at Kale now, feeling the steady warmth of the mate bond humming between them, she realized home wasn't a place at all. It was a person, a bond, a sense of belonging rooted in acceptance rather than geography. The journey to the royal territory took an entire week, and during that time Arya learned more about the man who was now her mate. Kale spoke about his life, the crushing loneliness of leadership, and the constant weight of protecting thousands of wolves. He told her about dreams he'd never voiced, about building a society that valued compassion over hierarchy, and his frustration with nobles who cared more about rank than integrity. He also told her about the ambush, how rogues hired by a rival alpha had attacked him with silver, leaving him to die buried in snow. He described lying there, feeling his life bleed away, strangely at peace because he believed he had served his people well. "Then I heard your voice," he said on the third night as they sat beside the campfire. "At first, I thought the cold was making me hallucinate. But the song kept growing stronger, warmer. I felt life flowing back into a body that should have been dying. And I knew someone was saving me. I thought I was singing you into death," Arya admitted softly. "To make the passing easier. I never imagined I could actually heal you." "That's exactly why it worked," Kyle answered. "If you had been trying to save me out of fear or desperation, the magic might never have responded. But because you were offering comfort without expecting a result, the old power moved through you naturally. Your grandmother's gift runs deep, Arya, deeper than you realize." As they traveled, news of the Alpha King's survival and of his mysterious new mate spread faster than wildfire. Packs along their route came out to see them. Some were curious, others skeptical, but all of them showed respect. When they noticed Arya's unique appearance, there were murmurs and exchanged looks, but the fierce protectiveness in Kale's stance and the obvious devotion in his eyes silenced every whisper before it could turn into insult. "Is it true she saved your life, Your Majesty?" an elderly alpha asked when they stopped at a pack for supplies. "She did far more than save my life," Kale replied, his arm settling warmly around Arya's shoulders. "She brought me back from death itself, using the old magic. She has power most wolves can only dream of, and I'm the luckiest alpha alive that she chose to use it on me." The pride in his voice made Arya's cheeks warm, but she was slowly learning not to shrink away from his praise. She was learning to accept that she mattered, that her magic was real and strong, that her appearance was rare, not cursed. When the royal palace finally came into view, Arya's breath caught in her throat. It was even more magnificent than she had pictured, an expanse of white stone that shimmered as though it carried its own sunlight. Staff members lined the courtyard to greet their returning king, and Arya was overwhelmed by how many wolves stood waiting. But what struck her most was the way they looked at her. Not with suspicion, not with judgment, but with curiosity, and something startlingly close to hope. These were people who had waited years for their king to find his mate, and her arrival meant something important to them. "Welcome home, my lady," an elderly woman said with a deep bow. "We've been preparing for your arrival ever since word reached us of His Majesty's rescue. It's an honor to finally meet the woman who saved our king." The rooms Kale gave her were stunning and warm, but Arya barely had a chance to take them in before she was swept into a whirlwind of meetings. Tutors to greet, staff to learn, protocols to understand. It was overwhelming. But Kale never once left her side. He was always there to guide her, support her, or simply hold her hand when the moment became too heavy. On her third night in the palace, Arya stood on her balcony, staring out at the mountains glowing under the moonlight. Kale joined her quietly, standing beside her in the cool darkness. "Are you having second thoughts?" he asked softly. "This is a lot to take in." "No second thoughts," Arya said truthfully. "Just amazement that this is my life now. 3 weeks ago, I was a cast-off in a mountain village. Now I'm going to be queen." "You already are queen," Kale corrected gently. "The ceremony only makes it official. But Arya, you became queen the moment you stayed with a dying wolf in a blizzard instead of running to save yourself. That's what leadership is. Putting others first. Offering comfort without expecting anything in return." He reached into his pocket and held out a small crystal pendant that glowed faintly with its own light. "This is a recording crystal," he explained. "It holds a fragment of your song, the one you sang to save me. I wanted you to have it, so you can remember the moment everything changed." Arya took the crystal with trembling fingers, and when she pressed it close, she heard the faint, haunting echoes of her own voice, singing what she thought was a death song, a song that had instead become the beginning of a life. "I don't remember it being this beautiful," she whispered. "That's because you can't hear yourself the way others do," Kale said softly. "Your voice carries power, magic, and compassion all woven together. It's the most beautiful sound I've ever heard." He stepped closer, his hands gently framing her face. "And that night when you disappeared, when I woke healed, I howled your name because the world needed to know what you had done. I needed every wolf to understand that Arya Snowsong is precious, powerful, and mine." "Yours," she echoed softly, tasting the word as though it were new. I think I like being yours." "And I am yours," Kale answered without hesitation. "Completely, utterly, until our last breath." The official mating ceremony took place under the full moon, 1 month after Arya arrived at the palace. Wolves from every corner of the northern territories gathered to witness their alpha king bond himself to the albino Omega who had saved his life. Everyone felt the symbolism, an alpha king choosing a rejected Omega, an act that defied centuries of tradition. And during the ceremony, Kale surprised everyone. He asked Arya to sing, to share her gift openly before the entire kingdom. Fear gripped her at first. Her magic had always been private, a mysterious force she barely understood. But when she met Kale's steady gaze and felt the warmth of their bond surrounding her, courage rose within her. She began with the lullaby her grandmother had once taught her, letting the old magic pour through her naturally. As her voice carried through the night, the air shimmered with visible waves of power. Wolves throughout the crowd felt their aches ease, their strength surge, their spirits lift. When the final note faded, silence blanketed the gathering. Then, as if moved by a single heartbeat, every wolf in attendance dropped to their knees. They knew what they had witnessed. This wasn't just an omega. This was a wolf of the old magic, one whose voice could heal, protect, and reshape the world. You see, Kale said, his voice ringing across the silent courtyard, this is your queen, not because of birth or politics, but because the moon goddess herself chose to bless her with gifts that can save us all. If anyone doubts her worth or her right to stand beside me, let tonight be their answer. The ceremony continued, and when their bond was sealed with a kiss, sparks of magic flickered through the air like falling stars. Arya's thoughts drifted to the strange path that had led her here, from a cast-off Omega surviving on the edges of society to a queen, with a power she was only beginning to grasp. She had sung to a dying wolf in a snowstorm, offering comfort, expecting nothing in return. Instead, she had healed a king, forged a mate bond, and discovered a home she never dreamed she could have. And later that night, as she and Kale stood together on the palace balcony, gazing over their kingdom, he howled her name once more. But this time, it wasn't a call of desperation or a search. It was a declaration. It was a proclamation of joy, a celebration of discovering what he hadn't known he was searching for. Across the territory, in villages, pack houses, and hidden dens, wolves heard that howl and understood. The Alpha King had found his queen. She had found her voice. Together, they would lead their people into a future built on magic and music, on power and compassion, on death songs that became life songs. The albino Omega, who had sung to a dying wolf, had become the most important voice in the kingdom. And the wolf who had been saved by that voice spent the rest of his life ensuring the world knew exactly how precious she was, howling her name to anyone who would listen, and even to many who had no choice but to hear. Sometimes, the greatest magic is the simplest. A song offered without expectation, a life given without demanding return, a heart brave enough to comfort even a dying stranger. And sometimes, when you sing someone back from death, they spend the rest of their life singing your praises in return.